Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about. The cold October wind howled through the Kentucky hills as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in eerie shades of purple and orange. It was Halloween night, a night when ghosts were said to roam freely and magic shimmered in the air. For most people in Dixon, Kentucky, it was a night for candy and costumes. But for one woman, it was the night she'd waited her whole life for. Amy Slaton, star of 1,000 Pounds, Sisters, stood before the antique mirror inside the dimly lit bridal suite of the Old Mill Tavern, a rustic, reportedly haunted in dating back to the 1800s. Candlelight flickered across the aged wallpaper, casting dancing shadows that seemed almost alive. She took a deep breath, her heart fluttering beneath layers of black lace and satin. Her dress was a Gothic masterpiece, custom-made for her Halloween wedding. It was midnight black, with corseted details that hugged her figure and a skirt that flowed like smoke. Tiny crystal spiders sparkled on the sleeves, and a dark red rose crown adorned her long, wavy hair. Amy looked radiant, part bride, part enchantress, and entirely herself. She turned toward her reflection and smiled softly. "You did it, Amy," she whispered. "You really did it." Behind her, Tammy Slaton, her sister and maid of honor, stood watching with misty eyes. Tammy had been through so much, losing weight, finding self-love, rediscovering life after years of health struggles. Tonight, she wasn't the woman fans once pitied. She was glowing with pride, steady on her feet, wearing a black velvet gown with purple accents. "You look like a Halloween queen," Tammy said with a grin, adjusting Amy's veil. "If ghosts are here tonight, they better take notes." Amy laughed, her voice soft and shaky. "You think Michael's ghost'll try to crash this wedding?" she joked, referring to her ex-husband, with whom she had endured a difficult divorce years prior. Tammy smirked. "If he does, I'll exorcise him myself." A love that rose from the ashes. Amy's road to this moment hadn't been easy. After her painful breakup, she focused on her sons, Gage and Glenn, and her healing. The world had watched her transform not just physically, but emotionally. And then, in the most unexpected way, love found her again. Brian Lovvorn wasn't famous. He wasn't a reality TV personality or a fitness trainer or anyone from her past circle. He was a quiet, kind-hearted man who worked as a metal artist in a nearby town. They met at a fall festival the year before, when Amy had taken her kids to a pumpkin carving contest. Brian, helping a local booth with metal art displays, struck up a conversation about spooky Halloween decor. "He made me laugh," Amy had told People earlier that month in an exclusive interview. "I hadn't laughed like that in years. He didn't care about the show or my past. He saw me, just Amy." Their love grew quickly but deeply. He brought stability and peace into her life, along with a shared sense of humor and a love of all things weird and whimsical. They bonded over horror movies, haunted house tours, and late-night bonfires. When he proposed last spring at a graveyard picnic, yes, a graveyard picnic, Amy said yes without hesitation. Now, on Halloween night, they were about to seal that promise forever. The haunted venue. The Old Mill Tavern had been closed for years before being restored into a wedding venue, though locals still whispered about its eerie past. Guests claimed to hear footsteps on empty floors and laughter echoing from nowhere. The tavern's history included tales of a ghostly bride who had died waiting for her fiancé in 1893, and some swore she still roamed the halls. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's why Amy chose it. "I wanted something spooky but meaningful," she said during wedding planning. "Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. It's about transformation and fun, and maybe a little bit of magic. I've lived through a lot of darkness, but tonight's my light." Outside, the tavern glowed with amber lanterns and carved pumpkins. A fog machine sent wisps of mist curling around the entrance as guests arrived in costumes at Amy's request. Even the officiant came dressed as a vampire priest. Tammy arrived with her boyfriend, Caleb's memory heavy in her heart, but she smiled through it. She was determined to celebrate Amy's happiness. "This ain't just a wedding," she whispered to the crew member beside her. "It's a resurrection." The ceremony. At 8 p.m., The haunting sound of a violin began to play. I put a spell on you. The audience turned as the candlelit doors creaked open. Amy stepped out, escorted by her son Gage, who proudly wore a little Dracula cape. Glenn toddled behind, clutching a tiny pumpkin basket. Gasps filled the room. The flickering lights gave Amy an almost ethereal glow as she walked down the aisle covered in rose petals and fake cobwebs. Every eye in the room was misty, including Tammy's, who clutched her bouquet of black roses and amethyst crystals. At the altar stood Brian, dressed in a dark burgundy suit and black shirt, his eyes filled with emotion. The backdrop was breathtaking, an old wooden arch wrapped in vines, skull-shaped candles, and a misty chandelier above them. When Amy reached him, she smiled wide, her nerves fading. "You ready, Pumpkin King?" she whispered. Brian chuckled. "Always, my queen of Halloween." The officiant began, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here on this All Hallows Eve to celebrate a union not just of two souls, but two spirits drawn together by love, laughter, and perhaps a little mischief." The ceremony blended the traditional and the Gothic. Instead of a unity candle, they poured black and red sand into a crystal skull jar. Instead of a ring pillow, the rings were carried inside a tiny coffin-shaped box. When it came time for vows, Amy's voice trembled as she spoke. "Brian, you came into my life when I didn't believe in fairy tales anymore. You didn't try to change me, you just stood beside me while I learned to love myself again. I promise to love you with the same fierceness that brought me through every storm. I promise to laugh with you in haunted houses and cry with you when the ghosts of life come knocking. You are my home." Brian's eyes glistened as he replied, "Amy, you've shown me that love doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real. You bring color to my world, laughter to my days, and warmth to my nights. I vow to protect that light in you always." When they kissed, thunder rumbled in the distance. A few guests laughed nervously. Was it coincidence or something more? Either way, the room erupted in applause as the officiant declared, "By the powers vested in me and perhaps a few restless spirits, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Amy and Brian turned to face their guests, glowing with joy. In that moment, even the ghosts of the tavern seemed to smile. The reception, a night to remember. The reception was held in the tavern's grand hall, transformed into a Gothic fantasyland. Cobweb chandeliers hung from the rafters, crystal skull centerpieces glimmered under candlelight, and a fog machine gave the dance floor a ghostly aura. Guests came dressed as vampires, witches, zombies, and even a few famous horror movie icons. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Tammy, wearing a deep amethyst gown and a mischievous grin, stole the show when she toasted her sister. "Y'all know Amy's been through hell and back," Tammy began, her voice thick with emotion. "But tonight she's proof that ghosts ain't the only ones who can come back to life. She's glowing, she's happy, and she found herself a man who doesn't run from her Halloween heart. Brian, if you ever hurt her, just know I know where the bodies are buried." Laughter roared through the crowd. Amy dabbed her eyes, hugging Tammy tightly afterward. "I love you, sis." "I love you more," Tammy whispered back. Later, Amy and Brian shared their first dance to Thriller by Michael Jackson, starting slow before breaking into a choreographed routine that made everyone cheer. Even the camera crew from TLC couldn't stop laughing as the couple spun, dipped, and nailed the zombie moves together. The menu was Halloween-inspired: pumpkin risotto, ghost-shaped pastries, and a blood-red velvet cake dripping with black icing blood. Their wedding cake topper featured two skeletons holding hands under a full moon. But the biggest surprise of the night came when the lights flickered during the cake cutting. Guests gasped as the chandelier above them swayed gently, though no breeze could be felt. Amy giggled. "Guess the tavern approves." Someone whispered, "That's the ghost bride giving her blessing." Whether real or imagined, it added to the charm of the night. For Amy, it was a sign that she was exactly where she was meant to be. TLC cameras roll. The entire event was filmed for a special 1,000 Pounds, Sisters, Amy's haunted wedding episode, slated to air later this season. Producers called it one of the most heartfelt and visually stunning moments the series has ever captured. Amy, however, wasn't focused on fame that night. She was focused on the life she was building, one full of laughter, acceptance, and new beginnings. During a quiet moment later in the evening, she and Brian slipped outside to the old courtyard, where fireflies danced in the mist. The moonlight glowed against the cobblestone path as she leaned into him. "You believe in ghosts?" she asked playfully. Brian smiled, brushing her cheek. "After tonight, I believe in miracles." She laughed softly, tilting her head against his chest. "Good answer." Inside, Tammy could be seen chatting with guests, her laughter genuine and warm. For the first time in a long while, the Slaton sisters were celebrating something without pain or controversy, just pure, haunted happiness. A new chapter begins. As midnight neared, Amy and Brian stood beneath the old arch once more for a private moment. The tavern creaked around them, candles burning low, the sounds of laughter fading into the cool autumn air. "This place feels alive," Amy whispered. Brian nodded. "Maybe it is. Maybe every soul who's ever loved deeply leaves a little piece of themselves behind." She smiled up at him. "Then let's leave ours here too." They kissed under the Halloween moon, sealing their vow not just as husband and wife, but as survivors of their own pasts. Later, Amy took to Instagram, sharing a photo of her and Brian standing before the fog-draped tavern, holding hands, with the caption, "Till death do us part, or beyond." #HalloweenBride, #ForeverSpooky, #LoveAfterDark. The post went viral overnight, fans flooding her comments with congratulations. "You deserve every ounce of happiness, Amy," one fan wrote. Another added, "This is the most perfectly Amy wedding ever, fun, real, and full of heart." The morning after. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tavern's windows. The staff began clearing decorations, the fog machines now quiet. Amy and Brian sat at a small wooden table, sipping coffee in matching Bride of Frankenstein and Groomzilla hoodies. Amy sighed happily. "I still can't believe it happened." Brian smiled. "You're stuck with me now." She giggled. "Guess I'll haunt you forever." Tammy walked in, hair messy, holding a cup of orange juice. "Y'all lovebirds better get used to me haunting you too." "I'm not going anywhere." Amy grinned. "Wouldn't have it any other way." They shared a laugh, the three of them framed in morning light, the Slaton sisters stronger, happier, and closer than ever before. Epilogue: The Legend of the Two Brides. Weeks later, the Old Mill Tavern became the talk of local legends once more. Guests claimed that on quiet nights, when the candles burned low, two faint figures could be seen dancing near the arch, one in a white gown, one in black lace. Some said it was the ghost bride of 1893, joined by a kindred spirit, Amy Slaton Lovvorn, the Halloween bride whose laughter still echoed in the halls. Whether you believed in ghosts or not, one thing was certain. Amy Slaton's wedding wasn't just a celebration of love. It was a triumph of transformation, family, and fearless self-acceptance, a night when even the haunted found peace. Subscribe the channel to get such videos.